Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. We're going to start today's show with a spotlight on manufacturing. The U.S. Economic Outlook dealing with U.S. manufacturing is forecast to increase faster than the general economy. Production will grow 3% in 2017 and 2.8% in 2018. My first guest represents a nonprofit organization that develops premier outreach, educational, and entrepreneurship programs and strategies to increase manufacturing diversity. Here to tell us more about that is Dr. Keenan Grenell. He is the Executive Director of Manufacturing Diversity Institute, also referred to as MDI. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. And I'd love for you to tell us more about the Manufacturing Diversity Institute and what it is you do.
Okay, well, real quickly, MDI, we're in business to ensure that individuals from underserved communities are successful in manufacturing careers as well as businesses. But to be really candid with you, I am so obsessed with making sure that we grow a whole new army of manufacturing owners within the Milwaukee area as well as across the nation that look like me and also fit up under the underserved umbrella. MDI actually comes out of a project that I was running as a consultant for the chancellor of UW Colleges and Extension, who is actually now the president of the UW system. At that time, he wanted me to work with high-profile African-American churches in the city of Milwaukee to do two things. One, to help them really rethink their community development strategies and to begin to think about developing economic development corporations. The second part was if some of those newly created EDCs had the type of capacity that we were looking for, then try to engage them in terms of setting up light manufacturing operations. Why? Because in these churches, as you well know, you got attorneys, you got physicians, you got educators, you got people who are involved in corporate America in all kinds of different levels, from vice presidents to directors and supervisors. You got individuals who are working in some of the areas manufacturing operations, and why not be able to pull some of that bench talent from the pews of the church to start thinking about doing light manufacturing. So once the project was over, I was extremely obsessed with continuing my work. So I floated a white paper in August of 2013 that basically said, if given the appropriate resources, there could be an institute in the Milwaukee region that would ensure that individuals could get the type of manufacturing credentialing, but also the type of assistance, tapping on the shoulder to say you can actually start a manufacturing operation, create wealth, and create jobs.
Wow. And Milwaukee actually has a long history of manufacturing, but as you've said, it hasn't always been a scenario where people in certain communities had really a link to being a part of it.
Right. Well, we had links in terms of employment, but we've never really stepped out in terms of actually being owners.
Right.
And I've always believed that it's better to write on the front of the check as opposed to signing your name on the back of the check.
I heard that. I love that analogy. And then the thing is I'm interested in how you go about actually, you spoke of being able to tap into churches and really use those resources, but how do you attract individuals into being able to sign the front of the check?
Well, we have a couple of programs, and I don't want you to think that just these programs are the only things that we have on the board for the future. But these are some initial programs that we are utilizing to be able to create this new juggernaut of manufacturing owners. We have something that's called the Manufacturing Idea Challenge. Believe it or not, I actually borrowed the idea from the Eau Claire Economic Development Corporation. They have a program called Idea Challenge. So I'm going, wait a minute. If there are ideas in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, there got to be ideas inside inner city Milwaukee. So in my conversation with them, they were like, yeah, feel free to look at our model and try to see if you can replicate it within the city of Milwaukee. And so one of the initial ways that I launched that program was through a small grant from the Community Development Committee with the city of Milwaukee. At that time, Joe Davis, I think former Alderman Joe Davis was the chair. of that particular committee, and he was very, very supportive of the work that we're trying to do. One of the individuals that comes out of that particular program is actually getting ready to launch something called Milwaukee Denim, and I can't really, tell about his business right now because I don't want to get out in front of that individual. But that individual is going to use the city of Milwaukee as his brand to bring online a brand new line of jeans that I think is going to be upscale, and he's going to go after a particular market. Another individual that comes out of that project, that particular program, actually has a PhD in pharmacology, and he has created a coffee creamer that is really supposed to entice the senses to get you alert. So he's going to go after, entrepreneurs and scientists and thinkers and people who are, in the creative space. He wants to be able to market that coffee creamer that he's created with those individuals. The other program that we have is a Veterans Lab program. And what we're trying to do is say veterans who have served this country, have significant skills that they bring into civilian life with them.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is tap into those individuals who show significant leadership, but at the same time have ideas about manufacturing. Matter of fact, we've just gone through now our second round of funding through the Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs to launch the second version of our Veteran Lab program. So I will be looking for at least 5 veterans in and around the Milwaukee area who have a manufacturing idea. We will take them through a needs assessment process, evaluate their idea, and then look at plugging them into our networks. Another program that we had that we did about a year ago, we believe that underserved entrepreneurs need to be really involved in thinking about exporting. 95% of the world's customers are outside, the confines of the United States. So why not try to reach those markets?
Right.
We took a group of about 6 businesses from the Southeast Milwaukee region to South Africa for 10 days. To basically say that the South African market is open. South Africans are looking to do business with Americans, and especially African Americans. I mean, that's almost a natural connectivity there. One of their diplomats that was stationed in Chicago came and did a workshop at least 2 months before we left, basically saying and urging us to really think about doing business in South Africa, but to make sure that you go and make enough visits to build relationships, because nobody in Africa is going to do business with you if they don't feel comfortable with you, if they don't feel comfortable with your family, and if they don't feel comfortable with you in terms of your character.
Yeah, and looking at making those type of visits, if you are looking to do something on an international platform, wouldn't you also need to kind of research and see what it is that the people of South Africa could use, or something that's not already in existence that would benefit them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we were able to do was actually utilize a consultant on that end to do some significant marketing and strategic information gathering for each of the 6 businesses that went. So before we boarded a plane to go to Johannesburg, each business had a packet of information letting them know about potential companies that they could do joint ventures with, potential markets that they could penetrate, as well as the importance of the product, good, or service that they were bringing. The other 2 programs that I have is something called the Innovation Cafe. And what we've tried to do is make sure that we hold it every National Manufacturing Day. So this past October 7th, I would like to think that we were the only nonprofit across the country that had partnered with a National Network Manufacturing Institute, which was an Obama-funded institute. There are about 9 across the country, and very few of us know about it. So we partnered with the Digital Manufacturing Design and Innovation Institute on Goose Island in Chicago, and we had some significant participation from several key executives, in the federal government, as well as with the city of Chicago. The last program that we have is something we call our Micro Equity Fund. And we were able to get some resources from WIDA. And I can't say enough good things about WIDA in terms of doing that with us. We are probably one of the only micro equity funds that actually serves the underserved community in the city of Milwaukee, and I'm very proud to say that we just did our first deal about a week ago.
That is awesome. Congratulations on that. And speaking of foreign countries, just read an article that suggested that the global winds are blowing in America once again. And the Wall Street Journal reported that Chinese companies are investing in manufacturing plants and expanding operations in the U.S. And so where we always kind of hear people saying, buy what's made in America, we always see made in China, but we could see that kind of switch up just a little bit, right?
Right. Well, you know, I'll have to say this about the Chinese. They're extremely entrepreneurial.
Oh, absolutely.
And you remember
I pay attention.
Okay.
Everything, like I want to say 90% of what I pick up is made in China.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the examples of that is that there's a very low wealth county within the state of Alabama, and the Chinese have built a huge manufacturing facility there. I just don't know off the top of my head what that particular product is, but I know that there was a significant buzz within the state of Alabama in terms of that particular capital investment there.
Wow.
Chinese are not just investing inside of the United States. They are heavily investing on the African continent. Matter of fact, that South African ambassador that we met with back in November of 2015 as we were getting prepared for our trip to South Africa was basically saying, you guys got to come over and do business with us because the Chinese have basically dominated the landscape in terms of their investment interests, not in just only in South Africa, but the entire African continent. So they're going to be everywhere.
Wow. Yeah, and this is all very interesting information, especially for people who have that entrepreneurial spirit and would like to go into business for themselves, but really sometimes need a little guidance on where to start, what they need to do, and your organization is there to help. So this is a great time to give out a website where they can find out more about some of the programs you spoke of, and also just to ask questions or figure out how this organization can work for them.
Right. Well, they can locate us at manufacturingdiversity.org, and that's our website. But we're also located at 4201 North 27th Street. We're actually now in the old Eaton building up on the 7th floor in the Energy Innovation Center, which is actually a part of the Midwest Energy Research Consortium.
Okay, and I think that what's interesting too is because we keep talking about manufacturing, and I think everybody has a clear idea of what that's all about, but can you name some manufacturing companies that are out there that we might be familiar with, specifically in this area?
Johnson Controls is the first one to come to mind. You know, Rockwell, you know, Automation, you know, A.O. Smith. You know, these are some of the legendary, you know, giants that are out there. Quad Graphics, you know, Miller. You know, actually Miller now is in South Africa. When I was in Johannesburg, I actually saw the Miller site when I was traveling around in Johannesburg. So those are some of the legendary manufacturers that are in this area. Down in the Racine, you got Syncerator. You know, and so those are some of the manufacturers that are here.
Actually, when you talk about providing jobs, that is like a large percentage of the people who are in this city who are working for these big corporations. They're going through manufacturing jobs. And you were telling me before we started recording, there's a guy down in Kenosha, was it, that does the McDonald's.
Right, it's called Fair Oak Farms.
Okay.
And he actually makes the sausage for sausage patties for McDonald's.
And this is an African-American entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because there's not a lot out there, so I think it's interesting to spotlight someone that, you know, we can all relate to,
you know,
the McDonald's patties.
But, you know, if we're going to spotlight somebody, I really want to give a shout-out to Daphne Jones. Okay, Glorious Malone Fine Sausage. She is actually a manufacturer, and she's doing quite well. Matter of fact, she was one of the companies that went to South Africa with me.
Okay,
yeah,
that's good stuff. And I love talking to you about this subject because we don't hear a whole lot about what's going on inside the world of manufacturing.
Well, see, manufacturing is not going to be the same anymore. It's not going to be the 500 and 600 people on a shop floor. It's going to be smaller cottage industries. It's going to be much more automated. Matter of fact, I would strongly suggest that, you know, if we're going to look at it from an educational standpoint of view, coding is the new competence that we're going to need to be able to have in our school system, because everything is becoming digitized.
Absolutely.
And so the shop floor is not going to be the same anymore. You know, I like to tell people that Skynet is coming, you know, in terms of the Terminator. You know, the machines are taking over.
Yes,
I mean,
they are.
literally
They are taking over.
Taking over, yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
And thank you for just really bringing it to our awareness that, of course, we all know things are changing and digital world is in full effect, but it really is interesting just to hear the things that are taking place as we speak. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
And continued success.
Appreciate it.
Dr. Keenan Grenell, he is the Executive Director of Manufacturing Diversity Institute, or MDI. And for more information, you can again visit their website at manufacturingdiversity.org. And when we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll meet two Milwaukee men who happen to be brothers who are not only making waves in the world of science, technology, engineering, art, and math, they're also motivating tons of young people along the way. We'll meet Khalif and Q El Amin, founders of Young Enterprising Society, right after this.